There we go. Okay, so again, to bring us back to the place we are, that the first four verses were the stipulation, where if this is what you desire, so then, and this is what you seek, so, which is the knowledge of Hashem and the connection to Him, then this is what it's going to yield. We spoke about the two azes, Az 1 and Az 2, that understanding God and understanding justice and how the world works. And then what will that knowledge do for you? What the knowledge will do is that it will give you protection. What will it protect you from? Section 1, it's going to protect you from verses 12 to 15. It's going to protect you from the way of evil men, which means that that people and their ideologies and philosophies, people and the things that can easily drag you away, the midos, the bad midos, the bad ideas, the bad Torah of other people. So then that will protect you from it. And then section 2 comes the effects of a bad woman. So let's take a look at the verses. We'll read them and translate them and then try to understand exactly what it means, the effects of a bad woman. La'atzilcha mi'isha zara. So verse 16, to save you from an isha zara, from a strange woman. That doesn't mean a weirdo, but an isha zara means a woman from the outside, and we'll see exactly what that means. Meaning someone who's not your wife. Minachriya, also a stranger, a foreign woman. Amorea hechalika, whose words are like a smooth talking woman. So in a few minutes, I'll explain exactly why it's an isha zara and a nachriya, why there are two things there, but that it's generally referring to, many of the commentaries understand that it's talking about false ideologies and foreign ideologies. That ha'uzeves alufnu reha, who have left the teachings of their youth, v'es bris Elohea shochecha, and the covenant of her God she has forgotten. Kol bo'eha, ki shacha el maves besa, that her house goes towards death, v'el refoim magloseha, and to lifelessness, to emptiness, to weakness, goes her magloseha, goes to refoim. That all the things she does, they just spiral towards emptiness, towards lifelessness. Kol be'el lo yeshuvun v'lo yasigu orchas chaim, that anybody who comes to her doesn't come back. Lo yeshuvun, it's a one-way street. V'lo yasigu orchas chaim, and nor do they attain the paths of life. What are we talking about here? What is this danger that we're talking about that we're going to be protected from? Why are we referring to this danger in the terms of an isha zara, of a strange and a foreign woman? So it's very interesting that the Gra talks about, puts us in the context of the Vilna Gaon, puts us in the context of taivas, of desires, and things that pull us in directions other than a direction of growth. And it's not necessarily talking about heretical ideas, though other commentaries understand that it's talking about heretical ideas. The Gra looks at it and he says that this is talking about things that are moshech, things that pull a person, things that pull a person's heart. He sees that because he sees that Mishlei used the terminology of a woman. If he's using the metaphor of a woman, if he's using the example of a woman, so that means he's talking about somebody that's attractive. He's talking to men, presumably, and that he's talking in a sense of something that's attractive. You can use the word attractive, or you can talk in very common terms. You can talk in a way, in the same way that when Shlomo Melech did this in Shir Hashirim, when he talked about the love of God and the love of the Jewish people to God, he spoke about it in terms of a relationship, and in the terms of a physical relationship, and in terms of sexuality, because one can understand and can visualize that, and therefore take that and translate that into a relationship with God. It's also, when we speak about a relationship with God, the very things that are the basis of a relationship between people is the same things that are in the relationship with God, and therefore it's not a strange it sounds a little weird coming from a Torah thing, but it's nevertheless it's speaking to human beings, and human beings understand this kind of physical attraction. However, what Shlomo Melech is telling us when he says that there's an Isha Zara and a Nachriya, they're two different kinds of taivos, two different kinds of things that draw a person, two different kinds of lusts and desires. There are those that are called the taivos haguf, things that are pleasures of the body, and things that a person desires, and a thing that a person that a person covets, but they're not desires of the guf. They're not desires of the body. The body really gets no pleasure from them. We know that there are two words that are used in the Torah to describe pleasure, to describe coveting. The one word is lo tachmod. Lo tachmod. And the way we normally translate it, so that we can speak about it in very, very simple terms, is we talk about that in terms of jealousy. Don't be jealous. But it means don't desire. You shouldn't have a desire for what somebody else has. Look at that and be grabbed by a lusting after things that other people possess. But there's another word that's used in the Torah. And the other word that's used in the Torah is lo titaveh. In one version of the Ten Commandments, we have lo tachmod. In the other, we have lo titaveh. And it also means tava. You shouldn't desire, shouldn't lust after things that other people have. The concept is the same, but the word is different, which means that it's talking about different things. Tava, something that is a real lusting, is after something that gives the body pleasure. Food, drink, physical pleasures, things that we derive an immediate kind of benefit and pleasure from. But chemda, lo tachmod, is really even after things where there is no hanas haguf, where there is no pleasure from the body. For example, money. That a person has a taiva for money, a person has a desire for money. They live their life seeking the 100 so that they can get to 200. Right? The Gemara says that a person who has a mana wants masayim, he wants 200. A person who has 200 wants 400. A person has 400. A person. There are people that have just a taiva for money. They have a desire for money. Now, there's no hanas hagufma. You don't sleep on your money unless you stuff it in your mattress. But you don't sleep on your money. You don't eat your money. Sometimes you go to a restaurant, and they give you food. The food is so bad, you say, I would have gotten more pleasure out of just eating the money that I spent for this meal than the actual meal itself. But usually we derive no benefit. We derive no hana'ah from those kinds of desires. A person has a desire to own things. A person has a desire to build an empire. All of that are true desires, but the body doesn't get any real pleasure from it. The truth is, Lashon Hara is like that. We don't really get any benefit from Lashon Hara. We get a momentary high. It's like sucking on a candy. Get a little bit of sugar rush. But then after that, we just, when we speak Lashon Hara, a lot of times the motivation is that if I could put everybody else down around me, I'll feel much greater about myself. But that feeling greater about myself only lasts for a few short seconds. So there's no real hanas haguf. There's no real benefit and no real pleasure. And I think that Shlomo Melech is telling us that if a person lives their life desiring pleasure, whether it's pleasure for the body or whether it's just general pleasure for the soul or for the psyche, then that is something that is going to destroy a person. And the only way to hold back from that, the only way to protect oneself from that, is through the understanding that God runs the world, and through the understanding of the system of justice and what's right and righteousness and the things that you gain from seeking Torah and seeking a relationship with God. That this is not just something that a person can make a decision, oh, I'm not going to desire this anymore. This is something that fundamentally a person has to rework their entire perspective on life in order to be able to protect themselves from these things. We have in this week's parsha the concept of Yifas Toar. The Yifas Toar was the section in the Torah where it says that if you see a beautiful woman in war who was taken captive, So then the Torah says that the soldier is allowed, and he desires her, he wants to take her home, he wants to have relations with her. So the Torah says he can take her home. She has to sit and cry over her mother and father for 30 days. And then, if after 30 days he still wants to marry her, so then he's allowed to marry her. She will have gone through a conversion process, because crying over mother and father means really crying over her idolatry, which means that she is leaving her past, accepting a new reality, and therefore he is allowed to marry her. That's called the mitzvah of Eshes Yifas Toar. Now, it's a strange mitzvah only because that doesn't seem to be the Torah's level of morality. It doesn't seem to be what the way the Torah would deal with a problem like that. You go to war, you see a beautiful woman, so you would imagine Torah says grab a book of Tehillim, sit down and say the Tehillim for say these chapters of Tehillim, and you'll be able to protect yourself. Nevertheless, the Torah says that if you desire this woman, you can take her. It's called a concession to human frailty. The assumption is that once the Torah says it's okay, no one's going to feel the desire to do it, because you've taken away mayim genuvim yimtaku, so stolen waters are sweeter, and therefore when we take that away from you, that this is now, it's okay, it's fine, you can have this. Oh, if I can have it, then I don't really need it. And then you can actually control it. It's very often when you're told you can't have something, all of a sudden you desire it. You think of a food that you would never, ever want to eat, and somebody says, you can't have that. All of a sudden there's something going on inside saying, you know what, I wouldn't mind that. Okay, that's section number 1 of this week's Pasha. Section number 2 of this week's Pasha is that if a man marries 2 women, so then one of them is going to be, and one of them is hated, and one of them is loved, so then the Torah tells us that the woman who is, let's say the woman who is loved has the second son, and the woman who is hated has the Bechor, has the first son. You cannot switch them. You can't say, look, I can't stand this kid's mother. I can't treat him as a Bechor, so let me switch him out with the other guy. And the other guy who is not the firstborn, we're going to take him and make him the firstborn. Also strange mitzvah, but okay. And then the third mitzvah in the Torah is trumps them all, and that's the mitzvah of Ben Sorer Umora. Ben Sorer Umora is a rebellious, recalcitrant child. A child that rebels against his parents, eats too much meat, drinks too much wine, small window of opportunity, couple of months. You can take that child to the Bezdin. You can say to the child, this child is a rebellious, recalcitrant child. We can't control him. He's now yours, rabbis. And the rabbis say, thank you. And they take him out to the gate of the court of the city, and they stone him. Sounds like a good educational methodology. Sounds like something very effective. I mean, what is going on here? Really, the parents can't take care of this kid. They can't control him. And the Torah says, go and kill the kid. Well, the happens to be the Talmud says that it could never happen. And it will never happen. I'll speak about that. I did actually a little bit on, I think, for the Shabbos message. I spoke about this concept. But at the end of the day, these 3 sections are the first 3 sections of this past week's Pasha. So our rabbis wonder, what are they doing one right after the other? And our rabbis explain that there is a progression here. That if you marry a Yifas Toar, if you marry this woman after 30 days of her sitting and crying her eyes out over her past, and then afterwards you look at it and say, I still want to marry this lady, then in the end, what's going to happen? She's going to be a hated wife. In the end, there's going to be no love there. And in the end, what is that going to create? A Ben Sorer Umora, a rebellious child. So the rabbis link the 3 sections of the Torah and say it's a progression. We start off with the Yifas Toar, with the beautiful woman, then the hated wife, and then the Ben Sorer Umora. One gives rise to the other. Very neat, very sweet, very, very compact, but it doesn't make any sense. Because you're doing a mitzvah. You're doing what the Torah said you can do. You're following Torah instructions. You go to war, you see a beautiful woman, you want to take her home, the Torah says this is the way you do it. Shkayach, I'm not doing anything wrong. What are you punishing me for? Why is it going to turn out that I'm going to hate my wife and I'm going to raise a Ben Sorer Umora? I did what the Torah wanted me to do. The Torah gave you the permission to do that only because at the end of the day, The Torah felt that if it would give you the permission to do it, you would be able to walk away from it. But if you're so self-indulgent, and you're so fixed on your pleasure, and you're so fixed on requiting your desires, understand that goes south very quickly. If your relationship is based on what you're receiving, it's based on your pleasure, so then we say that kol ava tluya b'davar, any love that's dependent upon a thing, batla davar batla ava. When that thing goes, the love goes also. If a relationship is based on a physical attraction, when that physical attraction or that which caused that physical attraction is removed from the equation, so then the love is removed from the equation also. And that's what the Torah is telling us. That when a person, you might be following the Torah, but the reason the Torah said this was to really back you off. If this is really who you are, that you're a person that after 30 days you can't come to your senses and say, what am I doing to this? What am I doing to this girl? I had a desire 30 days ago, and I still want to requite this. I still want to fulfill this. That means that I haven't sat and thought for a minute. What good is it to marry this woman? She's a captive woman. She's crying over her past. She doesn't really want to leave her past. What am I doing? This is just crazy. But if I can't think straight, that means that I'm thinking in another way. There's something else that's taken over my mind. My own pleasure has taken over my mind. And when that happens, understand that in the end, you're going to hate this. Because in the end, it's not based on the right things. And understand that when you are a person who's a self-indulgent person, and that is the basis of your directions, and that is your motivation in things, that's going to translate into your children. You will never say to them, be self-indulgent. You will never say to your children, it's all about you feeling good. It's all about just do it. You do what you want. Do what feels good for you. You would never say that to your child. But when you live that kind of life, that translates to your children. What your children pick up is not what you say. What your children pick up is what you do. And therefore the Torah is teaching me a much more powerful message by putting those three together. The Torah is telling me that if you live in a way that's self-indulgent, understand that it's going to go south quickly and is going to affect and burn everything around you. And that's what Shlomo Melech is telling me. Shlomo Melech is telling me that you need protection from an Isha Zara. You need protection from your desires, from your self-indulgences. And it gives the most base of self-indulgences. Isha Zara is like a buzzword for sexual desires. And that things that you, and desires, not only desires of the body, but also minochria, also from desires where you get no pleasure, but you just desire them. You just want this in your life. You're just focused on it. You're obsessed about things. Just understand that it's amareach echalika, that it's just it's going to pull you, and it's going to pull you in the smoothest kind of way. It's things that will cause you to leave your fundamental principles. And it's things that will make you forget the covenant that you have, the agreement that you have with God, with reality, with truth, with goodness, with integrity. It will break you completely. Understand kishacha el maves besa, that there is nothing good that come out of this. It's just going to bring you down to death. V'el rifai magalosel, and it's going to bring you to a life of emptiness. Kol ba'el lo yeshuvun, and it is so difficult to come back from that place. V'lo yasigu orchos chayim, and that you're not going to be able to attain the paths of life, because this is always going to be the thing that is going to be making your decisions. This is always going to be the thing that's going to stand in the way of your progress as a person. And that's the second thing that this will protect us from. Then comes along Shlomo Melech and says, you should know, though, that it protects, but it also uplifts. This knowledge that you're receiving of God, this relationship with God, let me show you what it does for you. What it does is, Laman Telech b'derech tovim, that it's going to help you walk in the derech tovim and the orchos tzadikim tishmor, and in the pathways of the righteous you're going to go. The derech tovim is the better people. The tzadikim are the best people. We learned the other day about the difference between a derech and orchos. A derech is much wider, archos is much thinner, because tovim there are plenty, tzaddikim much less. The tzaddik is able to go. The tovim, they do, even when things are tough, they do what they need to do. But the archos but the tzaddikim go beyond the letter. The tzaddikim in this respect, usually a tzaddik is just following the letter, but in this respect, that a tzaddik can do this even to undeserving people. He can do this. He can be good even in a situation that presents incredible difficulties. But if you know what's right and you understand what's right and you understand what the purpose of life is, then that will give you the strength and the motivation to be able to go b'derech tovim and the archas tzaddikim tishmor, and to guard the ways of the righteous. Ki yisharim yishkenu aretz. Because, says Shlomo HaMelech, I need to tell you, why is it better to choose this path? Because the yisharim, the people that are upright, the people that are straight, they're going to yishkenu aretz. They're going to inherit the land. The world is going to belong to them. Utimimim, and people that are whole, and people that are sincere, yivasruba, they're the ones that are going to stay in that land. They're the ones that are going to remain. They're the ones whose children are going to follow in their ways, and their grandchildren are going to follow in their ways, and they're going to remain eternal. They're the ones that can look down 10 generations and can see what it's going to look like in the future. It's going to continue to pass, because when you're a tamim, when you are pure and sincere, so then that has the ability to be able to be passed on to generations. Urishoyim me eretz yikaresu. But understand, when you choose wrong, the wicked, me eretz yikaresu, are going to be cut off from the land. Ubogdim yischu mimenu, and the faithless will be uprooted from it. Okay, beautiful. We'll stop here. This is, I think, the way we dealt with this parak, with this chapter, was beautiful, was stunning, tying the entire chapter in together. And the Mirza Hashem tomorrow we'll start chapter 3. Just want to blow shofar before I go. Everybody should have a beautiful, amazing, awesome, wonderful day. And we'll see everybody tomorrow. Mirza Hashem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shavua tov.
Have a good day, everybody.
you.